It was Richards who had been in the newspaper office when intelligence of the railroad disaster was received, with Brintley Mallard's name leading the list of killed. He hastened to forestall any less careful, less tender friend in bearing the sad, sad message. Knowing that Mrs. Mallard was afflicted with a heart trouble, great care was taken to break to her as gently as possible the news of her husband's death.
I have a telegram for you. I'm so sorry.
It was her sister Josephine who told her, in broken sentences, veiled hints that revealed and half concealing. She wept at once with sudden, wild abandonment in her sister's arms. When the storm of grief had spent itself, she went away to her room alone. She would have no one follow her. There stood, facing the open window, a comfortable, roomy armchair. Into this she sank, pressed down by physical exhaustion that haunted her body and seemed to reach into her soul. She could see in the open square before her house the tops of trees that were all aquiver with the new spring of life. The delicious breath of rain was in the air. There were patches of blue sky showing here and there through the clouds that had met and piled one above the other in the west facing her window. She sat with her head thrown back upon the cushion of the chair, quite motionless, except when a sob came up into her throat and shook her, as a child who has cried itself to sleep continues to sob in its dreams. There was a dull stare in her eyes, whose gaze was fixed away off yonder. It was not a glance of reflection, but rather indicated a suspension of intelligent thought. There was something coming to her, and she was waiting for it, fearfully. What was it? She did not know. It was too subtle and elusive to name, but she felt it. Now her bosom rose and fell tumultuously. She was beginning to recognize this thing that was approaching to possess her. When she abandoned herself, a little whispered word escaped her slightly parted lips. She said it over and over under her breath. Free, free, free. Her pulses beat fast, and the coursing blood warmed and relaxed every inch of her body. There would be no one to live for during those coming years. She would live for herself. Free, body and soul free, she kept whispering.
Louise, open the door. I beg you. You're gonna make yourself ill. For heaven's sakes, open the door, Louise.
For God's sakes, I'm not making myself ill.
No, she was drinking in a very elixir of life through that open window. Her fancy was running riot along those days ahead of her, spring days and summer days, and all sorts of days that would be her own. She breathed a quick prayer that life might be long. It was only yesterday she had thought with a shudder that life might be long. Someone was opening the front door with a latchkey. It was Brentley Mallard who entered. He had been far from the scene of the accident. He stood amazed at the piercing cry. When the doctors came, they said she had died of heart disease, of the joy that kills.